Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to Week 4 of the Fantasy 15 podcast, the official fantasy football podcast of Sauce on the Side. As always, Dippers, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the man, the producer, Leighton Pip Shaventone.
And Great Scott. It's already Week 4.
And joining us, the meat stud himself, the man who's got your stacks on lock. It is Mr. Lex Glasgow.
Josh Allen ran through the Vikings just like the Redskins ran through my hopes for the Packers.
Josh Allen, he was one of the many, many surprises of last week, along with guys like Lat Murray. But they did the exact opposite of what Josh Allen did.
Bad, didn't they?
Absolutely terrible. We had some good picks last week. We had some bad picks last week. The meat stud stack of the week, Lek, how did it do?
Did okay. It didn't help that Vikings didn't find the end zone until the fourth quarter, and that the Bills decided to, just be the Bills Mafia for a week again. I think...
Hey, at least we were on the right side with Thielen,
we were on
though.
the right side with Thielen. Thielen had over 100 yards. I think Kirk had over 300 yards. Didn't get our 50-point threshold that we aimed for, but everything was lined up. I think we're going to bounce back in a big way this week. Just wait.
Yes, we're going to bounce back, not like the Vikings left tackle, because that's how we ended the game again, with a strip sack. But, Dippers, get ready, because we're about to rattle off you some DFS. Latency, hit the noise. Fantasy 15, a Sauce on the Side production. All right, Dippers, in case you're not familiar with this podcast, the way we do it is that we run through all of the DFS options for this week. We talk high price, we talk low price, we go all the way down. We give you the ultimate stack of the week, we give you the flops of the week, and we even give you an official lineup. After that, we'll transition and we'll talk a little bit about your weekly fantasy. We'll answer the fan questions. Guys, let's get after it. Starting off hot and heavy, Lex Glasgow, where are you looking at for the high-price quarterback options?
Tip top, Drew Brees, he's there. We're riding that wave. The Saints don't have a true running game right now. They're on the road. They can't run the ball between the tackles. Kamara's good, but he's not a between-the-tackle runner. Brees he's a volume passer right now. He threw 49 passes last week, playing in New York. The Giants, they're a dumpster fire. I think Drew Brees comes out and throws for 400 yards and at least 3 touchdowns this week.
Leighton, who do you like?
I'm going back to Will this week with Matt Ryan again. His third straight home game. In both previous home games, he got 30 points, 40 points last week. I like him again at home against a weak Cincinnati defense.
You got to love it any time that Matt Ryan has that crowd noise being piped in below the bleachers. I'm actually going to go with Phillip Rivers. I think Brees is going to be the number one quarterback option, but for $7,800 is a perfect price for a guy that is playing a defense that surrendered 300 yards per game over the first 3 games. He's going to have to score his points early because I think this game's going to get a little bit out of a hand because C.J. Beathard won't be able to keep pace. I think I can go ahead and lock Phillip Rivers in for 300 yards and 3 scores. So, guys, we talked about the high price options. Let's look low. Who are we looking at the quarterback position?
Not too low, but, kind of middle of the pack. Deshaun Watson. I said it last week that he was going to have you close to 30 points at home because he does really good at home. This week he's playing indoors again against a Colts secondary that is just still not very good. Last week they did decent, but that's just because it was raining outside. This week in the Dome, he's got 2 of the better weapons in football with DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller outside. Look for him to throw for 300 yards and 2 scores at least.
Yeah, I'm with a guy also not that cheap, but it's a great matchup. Andy Dalton, he's playing Atlanta. Game should be a shootout, and Atlanta has now lost not one, but both of his Pro Bowl safeties from last season. Andy Dalton should kill him over the top.
I love both of those picks. I honestly do. A quarterback I'm going to go with, though, is a guy who's the quarterback. He is my quarterback. It is Mitch Trubisky. Guys, I have never started Mitch Trubisky in fantasy ever. This week is the week. 439, 334, 335. Those are the yards in the first 3 games that the Buccaneers have surrendered. Better than that, The Bucks D has given up a 78% completion percentage thus far this season. Mitch, 68% passer. And his yardage has went up every single game this season. I think it's going to even increase further this week. It's one of those games that I like to call a funnel game. So the Buccaneers front seven is very, very good. But they're one of 5 teams that haven't given up 200 rushing yards to running backs this season, but they're one of 6 teams to give up 200 receiving yards or more to running backs. If you know anything about the Bears offense, they spread it out to the running backs. Expect Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen to be getting a ton of volume this week through the air. I think Mitch is going to have... I think Mitch is going to go for 300 this week. I could see it being 300. I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit and lock him into 270. Whatever he gets with his legs is going to be icing on the cake. The man just has to find the end zone. One game of 2 or more touchdowns, he's going to have to find the end zone. If he does, he will pay huge for your fantasy team. So we'll go to the running back position. I feel like pickings are kind of slim this week. A lot of tough matchups, but Lex, where are you looking?
We're riding the wave. We're taking Zeke Elliott. Last week he had, 16 carries for 127 yards. He fumbled the ball once, couldn't find the end zone, but that's not his fault. That's the passing attack's fault. Look for this week. Look for Zeke to carry the ball at least 25 times. This is Zeke's offense. The offense runs when he runs. Okay? Dak is awful. Zeke is great. You better start Zeke. He's the only thing the Cowboys got.
I absolutely love the Zeke pick, and even if you're on the fence and Lex is kind of trying to push you over the fence, this stat right here should make you dive over and never look back. The Lions D has given up 450 rushing yards this season. The second worst in the NFL is 370. So that is huge. I think Zeke's going to be in for a field day. Lock Zeke in for 120 rushing yards at least. Leighton, where are you looking?
I'm going to Saquon Barkley, $8,000 at home against New Orleans. The New York Giants offense has looked very lackluster, absolutely awful at times. But he had 17 points or more in every single game this season. The okay matchup against New Orleans at home. I take Saquon Barkley to get at least 17 points this week.
I just want to add this on what Leighton's saying. Think of this. Alvin Kamara and Saquon Barkley, they're both going to be in a similar spot in this game, okay? Alvin Kamara is 1,100 more than Saquon this week. Do you guys see them having the exact same scoring? Just scoring the exact same?
I feel like it's going to be close.
I feel like it's going to be close to the exact same. Think of that. You got a guy at 91, you got a guy at 8,000. Take the guy that's 8,000 who has just as much upside as Kamara this week.
I do like Saquon. The only thing that leans me on to Kamara, 16 rushes last week, which is by far his career high, 20 targets.
20 targets. I don't see him getting 20 targets 2 weeks
He had
in a
the
row,
chance
though.
to touch the ball 36 times last week. That is a huge mark.
That is nuts.
A guy who's probably been one of the most efficient guys with the ball in his hand in NFL history. I'm going to have to lean towards Kamara. I do like going at Saquon if you don't have the money to spend. If you have to spend money elsewhere, go with Saquon. I think he's going to have a fine game. But 20 targets, 16 rushes. Kamara is the man.
Earlier this year against Dallas, Saquon had 16 targets as well and 14 receptions.
That's crazy.
And
workhorse. He's going to be
a workhorse.
They could have a very similar game.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the game where everybody realizes how good Saquon Barkley is.
Yes.
I really do. So, guys, cheap running backs. I think they're really hard to come across this week. Last week we thought we hit the nuts with throwing Lat Murray out there. He fell flat on his face. Game flow killed him. So don't think that was an us thing. That was a game flow thing. Where are we looking at cheap running backs?
Yeah. Going back to Latavius Murray hitting the nuts. He hit me right square in the nuts when he screwed my fantasy teams over. I'm actually going to lean down 6,400 Chris Carson. I've read all week about how Pete Carroll just loves this guy. Pete Carroll just raves about this guy in every interview he's ever given. He had 32 carries last week. Okay, that's nuts. He's going up against a defense that's not as good. The Cardinals are 29th against the rush this year. And that's kind of been the weakness of the Cardinals so far this year. And I think Pete Carroll's smart enough to realize that and just feed Chris Carson the ball over and over.
I'm going with Sonny Michel, 5,900. This is a pure gut call. Last week he got 14 carries. Only other player I think got carried with James White with 2. Rex Burke came on the IR this week. Sonny Michel is essentially the only running back that's going to get a meaningful carry in this game. Just a gut call, Sonny Michel.
Yeah, I do like that as a gut call. 14 carries last week, and the Lions kind of kept him at arm's reach all day. So if you think that this game is going to be a Patriots blowout, which we see anytime that the Patriots drop a couple games in a row, I do really like Sony Michel. And with the Chris Carson thing, man, he's going to be able to put the game on ice. And anytime you get a running back in a situation where he's going to get the opportunity to put the game on ice, you got to ride that hand. So we'll go to wide receivers. Guys, high-priced wide receiver, what are we looking?
Odell Beckham Jr. What was it? 2 years ago, he had that monster game against the Saints where he went for, 300 yards and 2 scores?
2 years ago, everybody had a monster game
yes,
in that game.
Yes, but think about that. The Saints, they're awful in the secondary right now. They're playing terrible. They got torched last week by Calvin Ridley and Julio for, I want to say, close to 300 yards there. Just got absolute torched. Odell Beckham, he's in a good spot. You can't guard him. He's kind of been sitting... he's been doing all right, averaging 13 fantasy points per game, but he's always got that big week where he just goes off, and I think this is that get-right week for him.
I'm going with Michael Thomas. This season, he has caught 28 of the 30 passes thrown his way. So 93% catch percentage through Breeze, completing 8% of his passes. I don't see why they thought this week against the Giants. Michael Thomas, automatic 20 points.
I'm actually going to double down on Odell Beckham Jr. He's averaging 13 points per game, like Lex said, 0 touchdowns. He's played the 3rd, 4th, and 18th ranked defenses. This week he draws the 30th. No touchdowns, and he gets to play a team that's given up 9 touchdowns to this point to wide receivers. I love this matchup for OBJ. I love this matchup for OBJ as well as Sterling Shepard. I think both are going to have huge weeks. I mean, the Saints D has given up 843 receiving yards to wide receivers. No other team in the NFL has allowed even 650. So that's an obvious one. I think OBJ is going to knock it out of the park. So we talked about the high prices, guys. Let's look low. Who are we looking at? A cheap wide receiver.
You kind of just nailed it on the head there with Sterling Shepard. Week 1, Deshaun Jackson torched Sterling Shepard's matchup for 140 yards. Last week, Calvin Ridley won it for $140 on the same matchup Sterling Shepard has. Sterling Shepard, I think, is better than both of those guys right now at this point in his career. He had a big week last week against the Texans. I think he's just going to ride that wave. He's set into that pass offense, and they're going to need to throw the ball a lot this week.
Especially with Evan Ingram out.
Yes.
I mean, you have to give OBJ and Sterling Shepard huge ticks, more so Sterling Shepard than OBJ, huge ticks in this when Evan Ingram's out.
Yes, and I think game flow is going to be favoring them throwing the ball a lot this week, which is also kind of why I like Saquon. He's just going to get a check down. I also see Sterling Shepard sitting in that soft spot in the zone and having long runs after the catch.
This week, so I was going back to Willie last week, Tyler Boyd. This week, his price went from $1,100. That's because last week he had 6 catches for 103 yards and a touchdown. AJ Green, a little bit up with a groin injury. He's going to play. Could be limited, though. And again, he played Atlanta. In Atlanta, I talked about, I think they're going to be down in this game. Had to throw a lot over the top and no safeties.
I'm actually going to go all the way to the bottom. I'm going 4,500 with Antonio Callaway. 5 targets through the first 2 weeks with Tyrod. Last week, he had 11 with Baker. His price didn't move at all. And this is one of those things that's going to fly under the radar. He only caught 4 balls for 20 yards. But you give me a guy that's going to get 10 targets at the price of 4,500, playing against a secondary that gives up the 3rd most receiving yards to wide receivers. I love this. If you watch any of the Raiders games this year, you would know that they've even given up more yards to wide receivers, but it's been because of pass interferences that they've been able to limit wide receivers just to what they have. I think that Antonio Callaway is going to have a breakout game, and I think that at 4,500, he is the best price guy this whole entire week at any position. So guys, at the tight ends, we don't really go expensive and cheap. We kind of just go with a couple options that we really like. Guys, where are you looking?
We never really play this guy, but Rob Gronkowski, okay, he's been getting double teamed. He's been in the news all week. It's all they've been talking about. What's wrong with Gronk? What's wrong with the Patriots? I don't think the Patriots are as good as they've been in the past, but anytime we've counted the Patriots out, what happens? They come back, they have a big week, and it's usually against the Miami Dolphins, okay? And this week, I think Gronk is going to be that guy that puts the team on his back, just like he carries 20 safeties on his back and eats Tide Pods before every game. I think Gronk is going to have a hell of a game this week.
I have 2 tight options for you. Number 1, Zach Ertz. He hasn't had a great of a season, but in 3 weeks he has 30 targets. Last week Carson Wentz wasn't quite up to speed yet. I think he'll be a lot better this week. Second option, Tyler Eifert. He's $4,600. Last week had 8 targets and 6 catches. And again, Cincinnati should be down in this game to throw the ball. If you haven't guessed it yet, I am betting the over in this Atlanta-Cincinnati game.
Yeah, I think the over should be just drilled in that game. I absolutely love Gronk. If I'm going to pay up for tight end, I'm just going to go right to Gronk. I'm not going to get cute with it. Gronk's a man. But 2 options I really like actually come out of the same game. Trey Burton, really not big on him, but I think that he is going to actually have a good game this week. If you see over the past 3 weeks, his productions went up, usages went up each week. Chicago's going to have to put points on the board. I mean, we've seen the Buccaneers' offense explode at any point, so they're going to have to put points on the board. I think Matt Nagy's going to use one of his favorite gadget guys to get points on the board. I'm actually going to call it now. I think Trey Burton's going to throw a touchdown in this game. I really do. I saw him run a read option already this season, so whenever they need that little gadget play, it was like 3rd and 1. They ran a read option with Trey Burton, picked up the first. I think that he will throw a touchdown, and I'm going to lock that in. I really am going to lock that in. I also really like O.J. Howard. $5,600, same price as Trey Burton. Big play potential. And he's kind of flown under the radar to be the number 2 tight end this season. Targets have doubled over the last 3 weeks. Week 1, he was at 2. Week 2, he was at 4. And then week 3, he went up all the way to 8. And if you're getting at 8 targets to a big play guy like O.J. Howard, and he has that big play potential, I really like it. So I think you can't go wrong in that Bears-Bucks game at which tight end you pick. So guys, let's look at defenses. What defense do we really like this week?
It's kind of a tough spot for defense this week, ain't it?
Yeah, I think there's 2 options.
I think there's 2 options. I think the Seahawks are your low money option. If you've kind of built your lineup where you've got some of those low price guys that we mentioned, and you can go to the tip top and you get the Jaguars, I think you got to roll with them too.
Well, I gotta get a third option. Let's say get Dallas Cowboys. Well, they're up 2 points, but Russell Wilson, is kind of a dog when he decides to play good football. This week, the Buccaneers. They have 3 sacks each of the last 2 weeks, and this season they have scored 5, 7, and 7 fantasy points, and they have faced teams like the Cincinnati Chiefs, or Kansas City Chiefs, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. This week, they play Mitch Trubisky and Chicago Bears, offense that just cannot get going. For $3,500, I love this team at that price.
You're forgetting, though, Leighton. Mitch Trubisky was drafted ahead of Mahomes.
He was. Therefore, he is way better. Just like Laquan Treadwell is way better than Michael Thomas.
That's true. So, guys, a defense, I don't think I'm going to get cute with it. Like Lex said, I'm going to take advantage of rookie quarterbacks this week. I'm going right off the top with the Jaguars at $5,200. It's an obvious choice. It's the Jaguars. They're playing a rookie quarterback. Sam Darnold's been interception prone, so I do love the Jaguars. I think they're going to be the number 1 defense. I think the number 2 defense, though, is going to actually be Seattle. $4,400, 8 interceptions through 3 weeks. Josh Rosen came in at in crunch time against the Bears. He threw 2 interceptions and 8 passes. One of them got returned for a pick 6, but it got called back because Khalil Mack was offsides. And then what does he do immediately after that? He throws another interception to end the game. Cardinals gave up 7 sacks only this season, which isn't, anything great. But Sam Bradford throws the ball a lot earlier than what Josh Rosen's going to do. I think Josh Rosen's going to overthink things like he typically does, and I think it's going to make a long day for him and the Cardinals. I really like Seattle. So, guys, we'll look at some of the higher priced options that we don't think are going to hit big, that they're probably going to flop. Lex, who do you think is going to flop this week?
I'm actually going to fade away from Leonard Fournette this week. He's coming off an injury. He's playing against the Jets, who they're pretty good at stopping the run. They're not bad. I'd kind of stay away from him. He's always got this nagging injury, and you don't want to be sitting there watching halfway through the game and go, oh shit, there goes Leonard Fournette out of the game with foot injury, hamstring injury. I can just kind of see that happening this week.
This week, I have 2 guys for you that are both the top 2 of their position. Number 1, Tom Brady. Offense isn't there yet. He needs Edelman. He needs basically football set to do something, which actually want to come back. Not going to have it this week. Option, Julio Jones. At $8,600, he's just too expensive for me to play with other options around him, especially with OBJ being the same price and Michael Thomas only being $500 more. $400 more, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think one of the big guys that jumps off the page to me is actually going to be Zach Ertz. I mean, he's priced at $7,000, which he is by far the second most expensive tight end. And he's playing a Tennessee defense that has only allowed 7 catches and 69 yards to tight ends. So I'm definitely not in love with that matchup. And as far as like a wide receiver, I agree with Leighton. I think Julio Jones is way too high priced for the production that we're going to see out of him. I actually am a little scared of Keenan Allen this week. I know that he gets a juicy matchup against San Fran, but I think that he's starting to fall into that Antonio Brown thing that we're starting to see, where we're seeing other receiving options actually do really, really well. With Mike Williams performing now, I think that knocks him down a notch, just like Juju does with AB. But other than that, there's really not a ton of high-priced guys that I just absolutely hate this week. There's just guys that I love more than others. All right, guys, we'll go ahead and get to Meat Stud Alert, guys. In order to be a Meat Stud, you have to, if you're a quarterback, you got to get us 30. If you're a position player, you got to get us 20. Lex, who are you putting on Meat Stud Alert this week?
We're going back to the top. Drew Brees, Deshaun Watson, Zeke. Zeke's going to hit the nuts this week, boys. He's going off. Saquon Barkley, Michael Thomas, and don't be surprised when you see Gronk running through the middle of that defense carrying 30 guys on his back.
I'm going to give you Golden Tate, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Tevin Coleman, and Giovanni Bernard.
I'm going OBJ. I'm going with Phillip Rivers. I'm going with Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, and T.Y. Hilton. Lex Glasgow.
Lex Glasgow.
Lex Glasgow.
Lex Glasgow.
Lex Glasgow's Meat Stud Stack of the Week.
All right, Dippers. Last week we had a minor setback. But every minor setback is followed up by what, boys? A major comeback, baby. This week we're coming in hot, we're coming heavy. It's going to be expensive, but it's going to be worth it. You got Drew Brees, who is a monster. We've already told you why. Michael Thomas, can't guard him. Nobody can guard him. When was the last time you ever heard somebody named Mike be guarded?
Never.
Except for the Plumbers back in 94.
Yeah.
You can't guard them. They're going to hit the nuts. They're going for 50. Hell, they might even go for 60 this week. They're playing against a bad defense who's just a dumpster fire. Look for that 50-point lock, and don't be surprised if we see over 50.
I absolutely love that, Lex. You've been pretty spot on so far this week with your Meat Stud Stack of the Week. And if you get 50 points from 2 guys, you got to be happy. So, guys, it is time to get to the official Meat Stud lineup. This week, I paid down for quarterback just because if I love Breeze in a shootout, I'm going to take his cheaper option, Eli Manning. I'm going Eli Manning at the top for quarterback, and I'm going Alvin Kamara at running back with Ezekiel Elliott. OBJ and Sterling Shepard. I'm all in on Eli Manning having a killer week this week. So if I love OBJ, I love Sterling Shepard, let's just ride the wave. Let's go all 3 of them. And then I'm going Antonio Callaway. You know, if you heard the first 5 guys I named there, you're probably wondering how in the hell am I going to be able to afford players throughout the rest of the lineup. I'm going with Antonio Callaway just so I can open up more high-priced options. And the guy's getting 10 targets. I'm locking him at 10 targets this week. And then at tight end, Tyler Eifert. He's actually the second most expensive Bengals tight end, but he's the most used. And we've seen him actually increase his production, and his usage has went up. So I don't know why his price is only $4,600, but we'll take it. T.Y. Hilton, I look at this Houston team, and every single time I think of Houston's defense, I always think of T.Y. just routing them. And he's played them 12 times over his career. 5 of those games, he has went for at least 111 yards and a score. Not just 111 yards, 111 yards and a score in 5 of his 12 games against Houston. I don't think that that's going to change. And then my defense, I'm going with Seattle. I already said that, Rosen in 8 passes threw 2 interceptions. 1 was a pick 6. I think he's going to get pick 6 at least once this week, and I absolutely love Seattle. So, guys, we'll get to a little week-long fantasy. A big problem that people are starting to see is the Lions wide receiving core. It seems like they have 3 guys on their team that are going to potentially go over 1,000 yards. You have Kenny Golladay, you have Marvin Jones Jr., and then you have Golden Tate, obviously. Give me 1 through 3, the pecking order that you like these wide receivers.
This week, I just said it, me still a little. I like going Tate this week because Dallas tends to have a hard time guarding the first-time receivers.
But what about for the whole entire
The whole
season?
entire season, like Galley number 1, Tate number 2, and Jones number 3.
So you think Galladay is going to be the guy there?
Maybe not this week, next week, but by week 10, Galley will be a guy for sure.
I think this is one of the tougher receiving cores to project. Usually this is like we're having this problem with running backs. Here we are, we're having wide receivers on the side.
Yes, wide receiver by committee.
Wide receiver by committee. You don't know who's going to go off. They're all probably going to see close to the same or equal target share here. It's just going to be a matter of who gets open and who catches the ball. I think Golden Tate for now is your number one. I can see Galladay moving to the number one. But for now, I think you just need to stick with Tate, Galladay, then Marvin Jones.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Galladay's going to do a lot early, or Golden Tate is going to kind of separate himself from the pack early on, and then Galladay's going to sneak back in. I think Galladay is the second best option there, but all three of these guys, they're going to have their weeks where they all, at least one of these guys is going to get 100 yards and 2 scores in a game, and you just got to play the weeks, but I do think it goes Tate, Galladay, then Marvin Jones Jr., which is pretty crazy to think about. Marvin Jones Jr., as talented he is at this point in his career, being a number 3 on a team. So another big thing, Royce Freeman last week, we've been on this Denver train, came back in, and after Philip Lindsay got ejected, do you think that Philip Lindsay's ejection is going to factor into any of his fantasy value?
It can. It's just I don't see it affecting too much of it, but I think it's just still going to be that same just race at the beginning of the year. See, it's going to come down to this, I think. Who stays healthy? Which one of those two can stay healthiest is probably going to get the job at the end of the year. If they both stay healthy, I still think it's going to be a share for the rest of the season. But if Royce is healthy, he's going to get it. I think if Lindsey's healthy, he's going to get it.
Yeah, I'm not worried at all about the injection. Vance said from the hot seat already, he's not going to just not play a guy because he got ejected one game. He's coaching for a job every week at this point.
All right, this is probably my favorite topic right now. We talk about Patrick Mahomes and how we thought that he has this crazy trade value and he's not going to be able to sustain success like this for the remainder of the season. Guys, look at Michael Thomas. He's catching everything thrown his way. He's getting 10 targets plus per game. And Mark Ingram comes back next week. If you are a Michael Thomas owner and you can go out there and just get the king's ransom off of a guy for Michael Thomas because they're looking at this early season totals, do you think they should pull the trigger on that?
If it's a 2-for-1 and they can get another super wide receiver in the deal, I would consider it.
It's got to be a top 5. You got to get top 5 guy and maybe a top 10 guy.
Yeah, but Mark Ingram coming back, then more guys can be in the box.
Yeah, but that's also going to be red zone targets going down. A lot of stuff's going to factor into that.
I don't see myself. If you have Michael Thomas, I see myself hanging on to him. I just think that he might finish as a top. He's projecting to finish as a top guy right now.
Yeah, he is. But I don't think that Michael Thomas would be one of those guys that I'm scared to trade.
Oh, I wouldn't be scared. It depends what you're asking me.
But yeah, I think that if you're out there and you're in the market and somebody's in the market to get Michael Thomas and they have and you get a chance to get a top 7 wide receiver and then on top of that you're going to get like a top 10 running back, I think you jump all over it. And I think that Michael Thomas right now is going to draw that kind of value because people are just going to look at the sheer numbers. 24 points per game. He's outscoring absolutely everybody, and he's been a monster. I think that he would be a guy that I would trade. Another guy I'm looking at, Mike Evans. Mike Evans has been on a tear, 21 points per game, the most fantasy production we've ever seen in his career. If you get an opportunity to trade Mike Evans right now, would you do it?
Yes, I would, because I don't have faith in Fitzpatrick whatsoever. And Dennis Winston kind of sucks, so I see production going down. It won't be as bad as it was last year, but I have a hard time seeing him being wide receiver 1 status all year long.
Well, actually, Leighton, 2 years ago, Mike Evans did finish as the number 1 overall receiver in PPR.
Hey, look, guess what?
With
5 years
Jameis
ago,
Winston.
Peyton Manning could feel his fingers.
Hey, guess what, Leighton? Last year, Jameis also had statistically his best passing year ever. Okay? I think it's just a matter of, I think Evans is slided in as that top guy, and he's a monster. He's a matchup nightmare. Trade him if you're going to get the King's ransom, but I don't think you're going to get the King's ransom for him.
Yeah, I think you're more so going to get it out of Mike Evans than, or out of Michael Thomas than Mike Evans.
I think you keep him.
Yeah, with Mike Evans, I think that if you can draw something up, and I'm not even saying a top 7 wide receiver like I said with Michael Thomas. I think that if you can get a top 10 guy at 2 separate positions, I would jump all over it. Because I think his production's going to go down. Actually, I know it's going to go down. I mean, we're looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has 3 straight games of 400 yards. We've never seen that before by any quarterback in NFL history. So that production's going to go down. Ultimately, Mike Evans is going to take a little bit of a knock. So I think that if you can get the right price, I would be happy to ship Mike Evans out at this point. So, guys, we'll get to the fan questions. Stuff we got off Twitter. John Scott wrote in, who should I be thinking outside of the box on this week? So, guys, what are you thinking outside of the box, a player that you can start?
Well, the background on this question. Last week, he did not start Carlos Hyde, and Carlos Hyde had 2 touchdowns. Well, he didn't know that Carlos Hyde's son was being born. He's not going to lose the game on the day his son is born. On the same guy's bench, he had Jared Goff. What did Jared Goff just do against the Vikings? 350 yards, 5 touchdowns. See? You got to be thinking outside the box. Josh Allen just tore up Minnesota Vikings at Minnesota. Minnesota flying across the country to Los Angeles. You knew Jared Goff was going to tear him up. You just missed a chance on it this week.
John Scott, you didn't start Jared Goff. What the hell is the matter with you?
I think a guy thinking outside the box, I'm going to actually look right at Antonio Callaway, same team as Carlos Hyde from last week. Really no reason other than he's a guy that nobody is going to own, and he should be owned, and I think he's going to have a huge week. So I would, if I have a fantasy team, unless my team is just a monster, I think I'm going to put Antonio Callaway in my flex because I think that he has a huge ceiling this week. So Max actually writes in, this is question number 2. Should I pick up Tyler Boyd for flex over Allen Robinson and Nelson Aguilar this week? Also, sit Ryan Fitzpatrick against the Bears.
I would pick up Tyler Boyd. I don't know if I necessarily saw him. Actually, yeah, I was talking about both those guys this week. And I would probably sit Fitzpatrick against the Bears because the Bears are going to get to him a lot.
I agree with Leighton. I'd pick him up. Just depends who you have. Allen Robinson, we haven't really seen it take off with him yet. And Nelson Aguilar, he's kind of boomer bust. I think Tyler Boyd's a safer play.
Yeah, with Tyler Boyd's production last week, I think a lot of it factored in from the injury to A.J. Green. A.J. Green went out, Tyler Boyd automatically number 1 wide receiver, and he got a ton of targets, and he performed like a number 1 wide receiver. I would pick Tyler Boyd up. I would hold on to him. I don't know if I'd start him this week over Allen Robinson. Like I'd said earlier, the Bucs secondary is absolutely atrocious, so I think Allen Robinson is going to get a lot of volume, especially while the Bears have to, match the score of the Bucs, so they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. But with Ryan Fitzpatrick against the Bears, last week we saw what Ryan Fitzpatrick was all in one game. 3 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. I think that the Bears' defense is by far the best defense that he's seen all season. I think it's going to be tough sledding for Fitzpatrick, but I think he's going to get some garbage time yards. So I think that I would put Ryan Fitzpatrick probably at my 15th quarterback. So I wouldn't be starting him in season-long leagues unless you don't have anybody else. If you have basically a household name at the quarterback position, I would start them over Ryan Fitzpatrick.
If you've got Cam Newton on a bye week this week, you definitely go with Fitzpatrick, I think.
Absolutely. If your quarterback's on a bye or you run into some problems like that, you have to start Fitzpatrick. And then our final question, Alexander. He asked, what defense should I stream? I have the Vikings defense playing the Rams after they got waxed by the Bills. What streaming defense do you guys like?
I'm going to assume the Jaguars are not available in this league.
We're going to assume that, yes.
I'd probably go with the team like the Packers, playing Josh Allen out on the road. Horribly, Josh Allen, the Bills put up that 3 points again back-to-back weeks, so Packers probably do okay for you.
I'm actually going to... I like the Packers just because of the Josh Allen factor. I think that there's no way that he has 2 good games back-to-back. And like Leighton had said earlier, Tampa Bay, that's a good streaming option. I don't think that they're going to go out there and, blow the doors off of the Bears' offense, but I think that they're going to be able to get to Trubisky. I think they're going to even get a turnover or 2, which is going to keep your... they're not going to lose you any points, but I think that they have a higher ceiling than what people are expecting. Lex, who do you like as a streaming option?
Well, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and start the Packers this week. I think you guys just kind of nailed it for me right there. The Vikings, I was on the edge. Do I start the Vikings? They just gave up, -8 fantasy points to the frickin' Rams? That's pretty bad. They got waxed last week by the Bills. What the hell happened? I hated fantasy last week. Never doing that again.
So, guys, anything else that we should touch on before we wrap this bad boy up?
This podcast, when you listen to this once, listen to it 2, 3, 4 times, take notes on it, do your lineup, make sure you win money this weekend.
Let's win some money this weekend.
Win it all, baby.
And on that note, for Leighton, for Lex, and Drake, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.